Thank you, First Minister. The next item of business is a debate on motion 105 in the name of John Swinney on Ambitious for Scotland. I'd invite members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now, and I call on John Swinney to move the motion.
Moved.
Thank you. And I now call on Anis Sarwar to speak to and move amendment 105.4.
Thank you so much, President Officer. Let me start with saying I'll move the amendment in my name, because normally that's what often members forget to do at the end of their speeches, so I'll start with that. Can I first of all say I welcome much of the content of the First Minister's opening statement, but the reality is the balance of the statement and the motion is stark. Overwhelming majority of the statement focused on issues that I think people would want to be the concentration of this SNP government. But if you look at the balance of the motion we're being asked to vote on today, it's overwhelmingly about one issue and one issue alone, and that is the SNP First Minister's only ambition and only obsession, and that is the issue of independence. And I think that is a missed opportunity in this first debate of this new Parliament. But let me make a broader point. Is one of the big challenges we've had facing our politics in Scotland is far too often the instincts of this SNP government and the SNP as a party is to try and talk about Scotland as if it's one homogenous unit, one mind, one view, and not that there is a mix of views across the country. Because the reality is, it's not that Scotland has one voice or one view on a referendum, or Scotland has one voice or one view on independence. There are big differing views right across this country. And so if he truly wants to be a First Minister for all of Scotland, he can't deny those variants of views. And I'll say a bit more about ambition in a moment. But let me just say, to hear someone that has been in government for 20 years to plead for some kind of fresh start, frankly, people will not believe it. This is a government and this is a First Minister that has spent more time in the last 20 years telling Scotland what he can't do rather than what he can do. Because this ultimately is a party that plays into the very same fear and blame I spoke about last week. Those that want to create fear in our communities in order to divide us, and those who want to pass the buck and responsibility by pointing the fingers of blame somewhere else rather than taking responsibility for their own actions and their own responsibility in government. And much of what John Swinney spoke about in his opening statement is actually to correct the record that he has helped build in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, the SNP have created the layer after layer of bureaucracy and public sector bodies that he now says he wants to strip away. Year after year for the last 20 years is this SNP government that's taken power away from the regions of Scotland and centralised power that he now says he wants to push back out to the regions. Happy to give way.
Thank you, President Officer, and thank Mr Sarwar for giving way. Of course, we've had a test of some of Mr Sarwar's theories on this in recent weeks, where we've had an election where the people have decided. Would it not be better for Mr Sarwar to allow the power to be in the people's hands and to allow the people to be able to decide on their own future by supporting this motion?
Well, Mr Gray is going to argue his view, I'm going to argue my view. That's democracy. And the reality is, right across the country, there is a mix of views, because it was very clear during the election. Actually, the First Minister said in his own statement, he didn't say it was an independence election. He said it was a cost of living election, because people voted in this election based on what was happening in their pockets and what was happening in their public services. He also mentioned energy, but the reality is this SNP government sold our energy wealth on the cheap. And what this Parliament needs to do is to redefine community benefit and community ownership for lots of parts across this country. But we also need a different kind of government. Not more gimmicks, not more grievance, but actually getting things done. And another area, that I'll agree with John Swinney is there is big global insecurity and global instability. And at a time of global insecurity and instability, what people across this country need is a relentless focus on the issues that matter to them right now, and that is accessing those vital public services. It is bringing down their bills, and it is making sure they don't continue to pay more and more and get less and less in return. So that's the ambition I want to speak about today, because there is no shortage of ambition in our country. Families are ambitious, for what happens to them. They're ambitious for their children. They're ambitious for their communities. But where is the ambition to return the NHS to the founding principles, free and available at the point of need, broken by this SNP government? The record shows that people are paying £12,000 for a hip replacement, £8,000 for a knee replacement, £5,000 for a cataract under this SNP government. That's how you return that ambition. Where's the ambition to make Scotland's schools the best in the world again, falling down the international league tables under this government? Where's the ambition to make people feel safe and secure in their communities? But the reality is that when the SNP talks about ambition, what they really mean is their own party's ambition or their own individual's ambition. And we got a really stark example of it this week. People who are their most vociferous supporters asked to put their hard-earned cash into a movement that they believed in and they support, which is their democratic right. Put their hard-earned cash. And what did people that were charged with the responsibility do? They robbed them of that opportunity. They embezzled them of that opportunity. And the reality is there is countless opportunities that have been embezzled by this SNP government for 20 years for people across this country. So yes, we need ambition. Yes, we need to deliver for people across this country, but that requires a different kind of government. It requires honesty, it requires transparency, and it requires actually put into words what the First Minister said in much of his opening statement, rather than using those issues to divide Scot against Scot. So what we need is real ambition to bring down waiting lists, real ambition to end the ATM rush for a GP, real ambition to make life more affordable for families, real ambition to bring down bills, real ambition to return police on our streets, real ambition to build the homes this country needs, real ambition to make sure we have economic growth for every part of our country, real ambition so every child gets the opportunities they need to succeed, real ambition to end homelessness and eradicate poverty in this country. We need a parliament and a government to have ambition that matches the people of this great country. And that can only be achieved if John Swinney focuses on the issues at hand and the issues that matter every day, rather than looking for reasons to divide us.
Thank you. Members who take interventions don't have the time taken from them, but it's still up to them whether or not they take interventions. I now call on Ross Greer to speak to and move Amendment 105.3.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I see Mr Sarwar's constructive and collaborative tone lasted about a week in this place. Clearly no lessons learned from that election. I move the amendment in my name, Presiding Officer. Every Green MSP elected to this Parliament was elected on a mandate to support the cause of independence. The gains that we made make this the biggest ever majority for independence in this Parliament. And we are here to assert that mandate because, of course, it's normal in a democracy that a parliamentary majority can pursue the issues that it's won a mandate from the voters on. But what we've seen throughout this campaign, what we're seeing this afternoon in Parliament, are increasingly desperate mental gymnastics from unionist parties who claim that we somehow don't have that mandate. We heard from the Labour Party during the campaign that their win in the 2024 general election in Scotland was a mandate against another independence referendum. But that only has any credibility whatsoever if you ignore the fact that they rejected the SNP's equivalent mandates in 2015, 2017 and 2019. We've heard the once-in-a-generation line, that it's not yet been a generation. I would ask those, not quite yet, I would ask those who use that particular line to reflect on the fact that 800,000 people were old enough to vote at the election just a few weeks ago, but who were not old enough to vote in the referendum in 2014. Is it really credible to continue with that line that it's not yet been a generation? I absolutely respect the cause of unionism. I respect those who disagree with me and my party on independence. It's important that unionists are well represented in this Parliament. But whether we are for or against independence, surely everyone who sits in this place should be a Democrat. And democracy is not a one-off event. The public are no more bound by the vote in 2014 today than this Parliament is bound by its predecessors. Democracy is a system that we live in every day of our lives. And this debate, I think, requires some honesty. Is this a voluntary union? Was it only a voluntary union until 2014, but it's not anymore? we've got to wonder why people are so angry and cynical. Well, it's because of these anti-democratic games that are being played. I don't expect the Labour Party in particular to have some kind of Damsian conversion to the cause of independence, but I would expect respect for Scottish democracy and Scottish voters. So I credit Paul Sweeney for making suggestions, for being open to a conversation about how we can move forward on the constitutional question. I would say that the best time to have that particular debate was a decade ago, but I welcome that there are some in the Labour Party open to having it now. I will take Mr Hoy's intervention.
Mr Greer for taking that intervention. If he believes in democracy and giving voters a choice, why did the Scottish Green Party stand in so few constituencies?
Mr Hoy may have missed it, but the Scottish Greens gave every voter in Scotland the opportunity to vote for us, and far more of them chose to do so than chose to vote for the Scottish Conservative Party. As I said, Presiding Officer, I respect the arguments for the Union and against independence, but I can't respect the increasingly desperate ways that are being used to justify denying giving the people of Scotland a choice over our future. The Scottish Greens have always believed that independence is the best choice for Scotland, not as an end, but as a means to a greater end. It's our route back in to the European Union, to undo the incredible damage that Brexit has done and to regain our European citizenships. It would give us the power to tackle poverty through things like minimum wage laws. It would give us the full fiscal powers that we need to invest in the infrastructure that we really need to have thriving communities and a successful economy. It would give us power over our energy systems, where we can make the switch from an energy system, an energy regulation system that just maximises the profits of a handful of companies, and towards one that actually provides affordable energy for everyone. The independence movement of 2014 grew support for our cause by focusing on that vision, by focusing on what we can achieve with the powers of a normal nation. In the 12 years since, though, I've got to be honest, I do think that far too much of our focus as a movement has been on process rather than on the cause and that vision itself. And we know that much of this is in Westminster's hands. We believe that's wrong, but it is the reality. And we should focus on what we can change, and that's public opinion. There's currently a marginal lead for independence in the polls, but I think we can concede it is basically 50-50. And the best way... No. The best way to grow support for... no, Mr Kerr. The best way to grow support for Scottish self-government is to do self-government well, to maximise the use of the powers that we've got. That's the focus of today's Green Amendment. The powers of this Parliament are limited, but we have not yet exhausted them. In 2014, we grew support for independence by tying it to that sense of hope and optimism. I don't feel that there's a lot of hope and optimism in Scottish politics right now. There is a deep sense of frustration with our public services. We have a lot to be proud of from the era of devolution. This is the only part of the UK where child poverty is actually falling, for example. But too many reforms have been delayed and deferred, most obviously to the council tax. But in other areas, on housing, of course, if we had the borrowing powers of a normal nation, we could build far more. But what we can do right now is set standards to cut bills through energy efficiency for new builds in particular. We can use the rent control powers that this Parliament passed just a few months ago to help people save and keep a roof over their head. Our health service is crying out for reform, some of them major and structural, others very simple. People just want the services that they rely on every day to work. They just want someone to pick up the phone at their GP surgery when they call it. When it comes to our environment, there's no need to wait for independence to clean up our rivers and our lochs. And we can do all of these things to demonstrate that when decisions are made here, they benefit people and planet. We can grow support for full self-government through independence by maximising the use of the self-governing powers that we have right now. But we should also do it because it is the right thing to do here and now, regardless of constitutional objectives. And I want to close on that note, Presiding Officer, because of course there's a majority for independence in this Parliament, but there is not a single party majority. Every progressive party in this Parliament has the opportunity to work together, to cooperate, to collaborate, to move Scotland forward on the areas that we do agree. The vast majority of members of this Parliament agree on the need for us to eradicate child poverty. A vast majority of the members of this Parliament agree on the need to take action to tackle the climate emergency. At the last election, as Gillian Mackay noted last week, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, the two opposition parties who did cooperate with the government to secure progress on the areas that we cared about, gained at that election. I think there's something for every party to learn from that. So the Greens will be proud to support the motion today. We will, of course, push for our amendment as well, because we believe in the cause of independence. We believe in putting Scotland's future in Scotland's hands. But we also believe that this Parliament has a duty to act here and now to give our children the best possible future that they can, to help people save money on their bills, to lift families out of poverty and to tackle the climate emergency. This Parliament is more than capable of pursuing Scotland's constitutional future and taking action on the issues that affect people in their lives here and now. Thank you.